Sage Wanderer here, and if you're curious, I am coming at you from my friend's beautiful home where I stayed last weekend. And the reason I'm back is I'm dog sitting for them while they go out of town. They have two very spoiled chocolate labs, and so I'm getting my canine time in since I don't have a dog right now, and so I really like their dogs. They're very well behaved. I think the chocolate lab is my favorite of all the Labrador dogs, and they got two wonderfully cool dogs here. So that's what I'm doing here. But the reason I'm making the video is I wanted to talk about, because everyone else knows I live off-grid, and I want to talk about things that I learned by this off-grid experience that made me a better prepper. It made me more prepared for the, defecated material to hit the proverbial rotating blade, or the SHTF. But anyway, I've learned a lot from the moment I fled Oregon, and one of the number one thing I learned from this off-grid experience is you don't really need electricity. You just think you do. You really don't need electricity. Let me explain. When I had to start making my own electricity, the more electricity you make, the more expensive it is. So, I got a basic system, and then I just tried to manage my usage. And when you start to prioritize, you begin to realize that I only used the electricity, a little bit for lights at night, but I honestly prefer candle lanterns. I've got a couple of those in the house. But I'll use the lights if I need to look around. I could probably have gotten by with a flashlight, but I'll flip on the lights at night, but to find something, But for the most part, the main consumer of electricity in my house is communication. So charging my cell phone, using my cell phone for a hotspot so I can stream videos to my smart TV and my laptop, and watch YouTube on my laptop and that kind of thing. So the charging of the laptop, the running of the television, and the charging of the phone is the main use and main expense of electricity. And in the event of an EMP or a grid down situation, there's really nobody else to interact with. Like, you're probably not going to be able to stream the internet. Your cell phone's probably not going to work. So what do you really need electricity for? Not a dang thing besides refrigeration. And I suppose if I bought a little bitty refrigerator, I think I could probably run it off of my off-grid, or you could go with propane. The problem with propane is you have to keep bringing the propane. Propane's not just a permanent solution. It's labor intensive. You have to carry it, or have someone out to deliver it, and then you're relying on somebody else, and that's not self-reliance. So one of the things I learned about a potential grid down through my off-grid situation is that electricity is absolutely a luxury. So is running water. Honestly, if you have a water source, carrying water is not that big a deal. It's not the end of the world. Now, you can't be lazy. You have to carry the water. You have to wash your dishes. You have to wash your hands. You have to wash your clothes. These are the things that made the big bad diseases go away. The fact that we have better hygiene now than they did before all of this luxury and all of this, all of these modern conveniences. So having a water source nearby so that the carrying of water is not that, is not that big a deal, or having a well with a hand pump is probably, I would say that's the number one priority after shelter. And a lot of the fear of EMP is misplaced, honestly, because, hey, there may be some people who don't understand the basics of survival who will be forced into survival in an EMP situation that will lose their lives, and maybe it's 90%, they say. It won't be me, because, electricity is a modern convenience. And, I have enough water filters to filter water for the rest of my life. And you can catch water, rainwater. So, water is a priority, a real priority, where electricity is not. But you can carry water. So running water and city water and all of that isn't important if you've got some source that you can purify the water. So, if you live near a lake, if you live near a river, if you have a stream running through your property or next to your house, and you have water filtration system, which is $20 for the basic water filter. you're okay. You really are. Now, solid waste disposal, that's you better have some property because you're going to have to go the outhouse route. And I would do that on my place, except it's not allowed by the county, and so I have to pay for a porta-john to be serviced, and they pump it out. So that's probably the biggest difficulty is sanitation. But if you have enough land, you can basically dig a latrine, and people did that for a very long time. So I guess I'm a lot less fearful of grid down, having been an off-the-grid prepper now for a couple months. That even though that's not long-term, I'm getting a taste for what that life is like, and it's not near as scary as it used to be. We rely on modern electricity too much, and I only make electric because, I don't know, growing up with a TV on, I kind of got to have a radio going or something if I'm by myself. Now, if I got another human being there, or maybe even a dog, I probably wouldn't even run the radio or the computer or anything as much as I do. It's mainly just, the sound of other human voices, so I don't feel so alone. But that's just psychological. So the absolute need for electricity in our society, I think the bigger, scarier part of EMP is transportation. And that's the problem with living out like that. You better be able to sustain yourself with food and water without going to town unless you want to go for a long walk. Now, having said that, out where I live, it's 17 miles into town. And I read a book that was written before the turn of the 19th to the 20th century by a man named Benton Smith. And it was about a community close to me called Bethesda. And it talked about life as sustenance farmers, as, basic, self-sustaining homesteads. And that's what that part of, the county was, it's been since the 1860s, 1870s. And in it, he talked about First Monday in Weatherford and how long it took them to walk from that church into Weatherford. And it took about, they said it took about 5 hours to walk it. And so they would walk 4 or 5 hours into town, and then they would stay for the whole first Monday weekend and take care of all of their business for the entire month, whether it's banking, whether it's paying bills, whether it's collecting food for the homestead, things that you need, and then you just walked it back, or you had a buckboard. A lot of times people would get together and put all their things in a buckboard and then walk along beside it, But so transportation is probably one of the biggest things. But if you're able to walk 17 miles in a day, then just don't live any farther from a market or trade area than you're willing to walk, or have some other transportation like a bicycle or a horse. If you protect the components in a Faraday cage, an e-bike and a solar panel would be absolutely like gold in the event of a grid down. But as far as day-to-day living goes, you don't need electricity. You really don't need running water if you're willing to carry it. And all this stuff just makes our life easier, but it isn't necessary. And it isn't a matter of survival. But so many people think it is. And when I get right down to it, the loss of transportation in an EMP situation would be the biggest hardship, not the loss of the household electricity. Even refrigeration, they salted meats before, and you have to change the way you eat. You have to have meat that's been properly preserved, or collect fresh meat every day. But anyway, yeah, those are lessons that I have learned about EMP grid down situation because I'm living as a off-grid prepper right now. And it's just, I guess the main thing that people will be dealing with will be the psychology of it all, and how many people will just have nervous breakdowns. And you know what? The EMP, the big EMP thing that doesn't affect me, that would affect other people, because how many 51-year-old men do you know that take no prescription medications? Like, I don't have any prescription medications. But that'll be another issue for people in the event of grid down. If you're on medications, those are going to be very hard to come by. So if you're going to stockpile something, prepare for your transportation. Make sure you've got water filters. And and stockpile your medications. But yeah, lessons I've learned as an off-grid prepper when it comes to a grid down scenario. All right, well, we'll talk to you later, and God save our republic.